A$AP Rhymes, the legal battle that Rocky had been engaged in for more than 4 years, has finally come to an end with a verdict of not guilty. This brings an end to a chapter that had been hanging over his life for that amount of time. In November of 2021, the rapper, whose real name is Rakim Mayers, was charged with 2 charges of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, which are considered to be felonies. The occurrence that gave rise to these charges took place in the Hollywood Theater District. It was determined that the rapper was not guilty on both counts. Following the completion of the trial, which had lasted for a total of 3 weeks, the jury reached a decision after only 3 hours of deliberation. As a consequence of this, he was spared from a sentence of 24 years in prison, which would have left him with a life that would have been severely injurious to him. The case revolved around an altercation that took place on November 6, 2021, between Rocky and Terrell Efron, also known as A$AP Rocky, who had been Rocky's acquaintance in the past. The altercation took place before Rocky was arrested. The two had been distanced from one another as a result of the time they had spent together as members of the A$AP Mob, which is a hip-hop group located in Harlem. It appeared that tensions had been growing over the course of time. According to the prosecution, Rocky pulled out a weapon and pointed it at Efron while they were engaged in a violent and furious argument. Rocky then fired 2 shots, and it is said that one of them had a slight impact on Efron's knuckle. The criminal prosecution asserted that Rocky was the one who was accountable for the occurrence. These allegations, which functioned as the most important part of the argument, were the foundation upon which the prosecution's argument was constructed. The prosecution's goal was to portray Rocky as a person who had used violence to resolve a personal issue. These claims were refuted from the very beginning by Rocky and the members of his legal team, who stated that the entire event had been portrayed in a manner that was completely wrong. In their defense, the defense maintained that the firearm in question was not a real weapon but rather a fake gun that was used in a music video. This was the defense's argument. It was argued by the attorneys who were representing Rocky that there was no meaningful evidence to back the claim that live bullets had been shot from the firearm. Blank rifle rounds were put into the weapon. The defense also argued that Rocky had no intention of hurting Efron and that he had only used the prop pistol in an effort to de-escalate the situation. This was an additional argument that was presented by the defense. Rather than relying on facts that could be trusted, their strategy relied on casting doubt on the narrative that was provided by the prosecution. They argued that the case against him was formed on testimony that was not reliable. The prosecution relied heavily on Efron's testimony, as well as text messages and surveillance film, for the length of the trial in order to present evidence in support of their claims. Additional evidence that was utilized included surveillance footage. Despite the fact that the video footage captured the noises of firing and the accompanying commotion, the film itself was blurry and did not present any evidence that could be considered conclusive. It was emphasized by the prosecution that Rocky's well-known position should not afford him immunity from the legal implications of his actions. It was their contention that Rocky had behaved in an irresponsible manner and that he ought to be held responsible for his actions. As the process of the trial advanced, Rocky was presented with a plea deal that would have allowed him to get a sentence of 6 months in jail and probation in exchange for pleading guilty. This would have been the most favorable outcome for Rocky. As a result of his insistence that he was innocent and his confidence that the jury would be able to recognize the shortcomings in the prosecution's case, he decided to reject the agreement. As a result of his legal team's portrayal of Efron as an untrustworthy witness who had a personal and financial interest to see Rocky punished, Efron's credibility was severely called into question. Defense counsel Joe Tacopina went so far as to accuse Efron of lying, referring to him as a pathological liar, and highlighted the fact that Efron is currently engaged in a litigation fight against Rocky as evidence that his comments were motivated by financial gain. During the course of the trial, the defense of the defendant's right to self-defense was made an essential contribution. Due to the fact that this was the instruction that was provided to the members of the jury, it is possible that Rocky will be exonerated if they come to the conclusion that he acted out of a justifiable concern for his own safety or the protection of others who were closely surrounding him. Due to the fact that there was no conclusive evidence that demonstrated that live ammunition had been used, the jury ultimately found in favor of Rocky. In addition, they took into consideration the inconsistencies that were present in Efron's account of the events. The defendant was found not guilty on both counts after only 3 hours of deliberation, which led to the conclusion that the defendant was not guilty. At the moment when the verdict was read out loud, Rocky was visibly overcome with emotion. This occurred as soon as the verdict was pronounced. Immediately, he embraced Rihanna, his longtime partner and the mother of his children, as well as his family and several members of his legal team. He also hugged his relatives. He was able to convey his thankfulness to the jury by saying, "Thank you all for saving my life." His face was filled with a distinct expression of delight as he conveyed his gratitude. During the time that he stood outside of the courthouse, he reflected on the predicament that had been following him for many years. He described it as a crazy experience and expressed his heartfelt gratitude for the chance to move forward as a free man. He also referred to it as a crazy experience. Their 2 young sons were present at the closing proceedings, which Rihanna had brought with her. They were witnesses to the ceremonies. There were other court sessions that Rihanna had attended in order to show her support for Rocky. While she was hugging his counsel, it was noticed that she appeared to be experiencing a significant sense of relief as a result of the ruling. Rocky is still facing legal challenges despite the fact that he was found not guilty in the criminal case. This is due to the fact that the civil complaint that Efren filed against him has not yet been settled. The rapper, on the other hand, is now free to restore his attention to his professional and personal life without the immediate stress of the threat of being imprisoned hanging over his head. He is now able to focus that concentration on his activities. He is getting ready for an eventful year, which will include him performing as the headlining act at the Rolling Loud Music Festival in March, co-chairing the prestigious Met Gala in May, and starring alongside Denzel Washington in the upcoming film Highest to Lowest, which will be directed by Spike Lee and is scheduled to be released in the early summer. After putting his legal issues behind him, he is getting ready for them. Immediately following the announcement of the verdict, the District Attorney of Los Angeles, Nathan Hochman, expressed his acceptance of the finding reached by the jury while simultaneously emphasizing the significance of accountability in line with the law. He emphasized that his office is still committed to achieving justice regardless of the status or authority of an individual, but that this commitment has not changed. As a consequence of the resolution of this case, Rocky is now allowed to move forward without the overhanging uncertainty of a criminal conviction, which is a significant turning point that has occurred as a result of everything that has transpired. Through the acquisition of his independence, he is now in a position to focus on his musical ambitions, fashion endeavors, and his family. As a result, he is able to approach the subsequent era of his life with a rejuvenated sense of purpose. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.